Is anybody out there?
Mark Radcliffe. 1FM. Oh, yes.
Radio 1 in Manchester. Mark Kermode is here, and, well, for what is it, the third time ever, it's a current cult classic.
I think it's the fourth, because we inducted Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction when they came out, but of course The Crow was the missing one. Remember, we did do
Brandon Lee.
Brandon Lee. I still think that's a really good movie.
I still haven't seen it, because I keep forgetting to remind you to bring me the video to lend me.
I'll bring you the videotape next week. Would you like to see it?
Yeah.
Okay, then you can review it the week after.
Right.
So, new inductee, Clerks. When I first saw Clerks, this is an incredibly cheap movie. When I saw it at first, I saw it with, when you go and see movies in preview screenings, there are two types of audiences. There's the magazine audiences, which is like, you know, Q and all that lot. And then there's the national press show, which is all the newspapers. The people tend to be a little bit older. But when I saw it with all the Q audience and everything, everybody was laughing their heads off. And this is great. This is hilarious. This is a marvellous movie. Yeah. Saw it again with the national press critics, and it's absolute deathly silence. So one thing to say about this is it's a very audience-specific movie. The only time I've ever experienced that before was seeing Stranger Than Paradise. I remember seeing Stranger Than Paradise with the magazine audience, everyone laughing, then seeing it a week later with the older persons, and they're not finding it funny at all. The deal with Clerks is $27,000, black and white. That's incredibly cheap. It's directed by this guy called Kevin Smith.
I mean, that's nothing, is it? 27. I mean, like most kind of pop videos would come in at 3 times the budget of that, wouldn't they?
Absolutely nothing. He got the money for it as well, but he went to film school and then he left film school but took his grant with him. Right. He sold his comic book collection, and fortunately his car got swept away in a flood, and he got the insurance for this. That's how he got the $27,000. It's all shot in a grocery store called the Quick Stop Grocery Store, and what happened was he worked in the store by day and then shot the movie in the store by night. Right. In order to get around the fact they're shooting at night, they make a big business at the beginning that the blinds at the front of the store, somebody's glued them closed, okay? So the whole store is in darkness all the way through the film, so you can't see outside. Marvellous, so it looks like it's actually daytime.
I mean, see, this is interesting. I mean, he deserves to get something, doesn't he? Because I used to work in a grocery shop, you know, stacking shelves and slicing things by day, you know, and at night I used to go out and spend the money I'd earned on beer, you see, and that's why I'm a DJ, and he's a cult film director.
He's a top filmmaker.
And there you go.
And they edited it in the video store, which was next door. So this is really, really about as cheap as it gets. The story is, there is no story. There's two guys, Dante and Randall. They stay in the store all day. One of them works behind the grocery counter. One of them works behind the video counter. Dante is our main guy, and he worries about everything, and he's got a problem that his old girlfriend is about to marry somebody else, and his new girlfriend has had relationships that he didn't know about or he did know about. Then meanwhile in the video store there's Randall, and all he wants to do is talk about The Empire Strikes Back, porn movies, and the kind of intricacies of male life. And that's the whole movie. It's two guys in a store talking. People come, people go, people do strange things in the store, but basically it's just these two guys together. Doesn't sound rip-roaringly funny, does it?
It doesn't sound rip-roaringly interesting, Mark.
Absolutely thigh-slapping. So what I'm going to do, just
is that good or bad?
It's great. It's fantastic. It's very, very, very rude. The whole film looks like Stranger Than Paradise, grainy 16mm, black and white, blown up to 35. So it has that kind of cult movie feel to it. I mean, this feels more like a cult movie than anything we've done for a long time. The difference is, whereas Stranger Than Paradise is whimsical and strange and exotic, this is just downright filthy. Okay? Now, also giving it fabulous cult status is this, which is the soundtrack album. That any movie which is going to have cult status nowadays comes out with a soundtrack album which has bits of the dialogue on the soundtrack album. I applaud this thing. I think it's absolutely marvellous that now we get dialogue tracks rather than just songs. So rather than play you, a clip from it, we're going to play you a track from the Clerks soundtrack album. This is just an example of what the dialogue is like. This is one of the very few examples of dialogue in the movie that doesn't have obscenity all over it. What's happening here is that Dante and Randall are discussing Dante's past catastrophic love life with his ex-girlfriend who's called Caitlin, and Randall is basically trying to tell Dante that Caitlin was never any good for him.
Chick only made you nuts, man. She cheated on you how many times?
8.5.
8.5?
Party at John Kay's senior year. I get blitzed, passed out in his bedroom. Caitlin comes in, jumps all over me.
So that's cheating?
No, in the middle of it, she called me Brad.
She called you Brad?
Called me Brad.
That's not cheating. People say crazy shit during sex. One time I called this girl Mom.
So that's track 6 on the soundtrack album. The whole film is basically that. It's that kind of exchange done for an hour and a half. The movie we played at Cannes and won the kind of Best Newcomers Directors Award. It played at the Sundance Film Festival. All the awards that it has won are absolutely duly deserved. I have seen some people be offended by this. There was a...
I can't think why.
No, be offended by the movie and about how disgusting it is. This is from an interview with Kevin Smith, which was done by Nigel Floyd. This is lovely. He's saying... What's really funny, yesterday we had a screening, and Afterwards, we had a Q&A and people came up and approached us. Then this British lady came up to us, and this is the first time this had ever happened. She's like, and then he does his English accent, I just had to come and tell you I really hated your film. It was so vulgar. It was awful. People don't talk that way. People really don't. And I was like, I thought it was pretty cool. I was waiting for something to happen. The thing you have to understand is she stayed through 90 minutes of the film, then she stayed for 20 minutes of the Q&A afterwards, then she waited in line to get down to speak to us just to tell us how much she hated it.
Right.
And then she took off. And the really weird thing is, it was Margaret Thatcher. And that's what most of Kevin Smith's speech is like. It's just a great movie. People will be learning it. People will be reciting it for years to come. It's like Tarantino, but we're in its cine literacy. Long conversations about whether Return of the Jedi or Empire Strikes Back were better films. Who actually made the Death Star? Did the construction workers all get blown up at the end of that movie? Did they deserve to die? But it's Tarantino in which all the violence is in the dialogue. So rather than me just ramble on again, one more clip, and then now I'm out of here, basically. This is a clip from towards the end of the movie. When, it's just Dante and Randall talking. What's happened is that Dante has found out that one of the people he used to go out with has died, and he's about to miss the funeral because he's got to spend the day working in the grocery store.
Oh, I'm gonna go to her wake.
No, you're not.
Why not?
It's today.
What?
Paulson's funeral parlor. Next show's at 4.
Shit, what about tomorrow?
One night only. She's buried in the morning.
Oh, you gotta watch the story. I gotta go to this.
Wait. Has it ever occurred to you that I might be bereaved as well?
You hardly knew her.
True. But do you know how many people are going to be there? All of our old classmates, to say the least.
Oh, stop it. This is beneath even you.
I'm not going to miss what's probably going to be the social event of the season.
You hate people.
But I love gatherings. Isn't it ironic?
There's just sort of waiting for Godot for the 90s, you know.
I think it's marvellous. I mean, the final word on this is I'm slightly concerned that maybe Kevin Smith has made the best film he'll ever make first time. It will be very hard to see how somebody can make something so compact, so tight, and so enchantingly disgusting all over again. However, we are promised that the character that Kevin Smith plays in the movie, Silent Bob, will return in the next Kevin Smith movie, which is called Dogma. Like I said, the movie is filthy, it's grotesque, it's very boyish, it's a bunch of guys sitting around talking dirty and filthy, and it really, the air turns blue, and I loved it.
Right, okay. I mean, two sad inadequates in a room discussing sex they probably never even had. I mean, what could be interesting about that, lad?
Fancy a brew?
Competition
This is Radio 1 in Manchester. The boy lad is still here, reinstated and firing on all 6.
Cooking.
And Mark Kermode is here with competition time. And Cheese is here too.
Hello!
Hey, it's a good routine.
Hey, well, it's
I feel
fantastic.
a bit threatened by that routine.
That's what that, in essence, is the zoo format of radio. That's what's known as a posse. Okay then, right, competition time.
This week, it's a bonanza bunch of goodies.
Now, there you are, you see. You started off by slagging me off at the beginning of the programme, saying Lamar, Monkey Boy, Breath of Fresh Air, fantastic. How many prizes did he give away?
1.
How many prizes are on Now I'm Back?
A bumper bonanza or something.
I'll rest my case.
That's right, a bumper bonanza bag of goodies to do with Clerks. What you're going to win is the fantastic Clerks soundtrack album.
You sounded like Frank Sidebottom then when you blew your nose while you were saying what they were going to win.
The fantastic Clerks soundtrack. I'm not going to do that because it's not funny. The Clerks soundtrack album, a Clerks t-shirt, which is great and a great fashion accessory, and a Clerks cap. And what you have to do is you play the soundtrack album and you put the cap and the t-shirt in the drawer, and then 20 years later, somebody will pay you a large amount of money for them because they will have become cult movies, okay?
Yeah.
So I was trying to think of a good Clerks question, and I was saying before that movies that have got cult potential tend to be movies now which have got soundtrack albums with dialogue on them, okay? So since I'm assuming that people haven't seen Clerks yet, I kind of got off on this thinking about dialogue on soundtrack albums. One of the first soundtrack albums ever to have dialogue on it was the Caine Mutiny, which they only ever pressed 100 and then they withdrew it because they realized that they didn't have the rights to dialogue. Now, we all know that dialogue resurfaced on soundtrack albums with Quentin Tarantino, okay? That was the thing that kicked it back up. However, before Tarantino, there was a very famous Alan Parker movie, a sort of sub-horror movie that came out in the 1980s, which had dialogue on the soundtrack album. And that's really the thing that kicked the soundtrack album dialogue, you know, bonanza back off again. What's the name of the Alan Parker movie? Came out in the 1980s, the soundtrack album of which featured dialogue. It was a kind of sub-horror movie, and I'll give you a big clue. It starred Mr. Rourke.
Right, okay.
Send in your entries to...
Carry On Screaming competition.
Mark Kermode, BBC Radio 1 FM, Oxford Road, Manchester M60 1SJ. BBC Radio 1 FM, Oxford Road, Manchester M60 1SJ. And just remembered, I had a bit of dialogue from a soundtrack album right here.
What is it?
Bestows, New York, August 16th. Despite massive traffic jams, drenching thunderstorms, shortages of food, water, medical facilities. About 300,000 young people swarmed over this rural area today for the Woodstock Music and Art Fair. The prospect of drugs and the excitement of making the scene, the young people came in droves, camping in the woods, romping in the mud, talking, smoking, and listening to wailing music. Quote, participants well behaved. The crowd, which camped on the 600-acre farm of Max Yasger near here for the past 2 days, was, cheer it for us, people, was well behaved according to both the sponsors and the police, even though about 75 persons in the area were arrested, mostly on possessing narcotics. Bummer.
An extract from the soundtrack of Woodstock. I just remember that idea.
What they don't point out in that is well behaved, but A, no toilet facilities, B, no food. And who did they rely on to drop food on the crowd to Woodstock? The very same aeroplanes that just the week before had been dropping bombs on Vietnam. That's revolution for you.
Bummer.
Mark Radcliffe, missing you already.